Before we start, a quick reminder to hit the subscribe button. Only 4% of my channel is subscribed. When it reaches 1,000 subscribers, I will release a special video.
Chapter 5, Heart of the Scourge. The hum of the Voyager's engines was a comforting constant, a rhythmic reminder of the ship's lifeblood as it coursed through the vast, silent ocean of space. Captain Ethan Blackwood stood on the bridge, his gaze fixed on the shimmering expanse beyond the viewport. Stars streaked past in a kaleidoscope of light, a mesmerizing backdrop to the storm brewing within his mind. "Captain," came the steady voice of Lieutenant Harper, the ship's tactical officer. "We've received a transmission from command. It looks like the Stellar Scourge is on the move again." Ethan turned, his expression unreadable but his eyes alight with the flicker of determination. "Patch it through to my quarters. I want to review it privately." As he made his way down the narrow corridors of the ship, the metallic clank of his boots against the floor echoed in the sterile silence. The crew members he passed offered respectful nods, a mix of admiration and trust in their eyes. Ethan's reputation as a steadfast leader had been hard-earned, and he felt the weight of that responsibility now more than ever. In the privacy of his quarters, Ethan activated the holoscreen. The face of Admiral Kane materialized, stern and imposing. "Captain Blackwood, intelligence reports indicate that the Stellar Scourge is amassing near the Yarian Nebula. We suspect they're planning a major offensive." Ethan nodded, absorbing the information. "Understood, Admiral. We'll adjust our course and prepare for engagement." The transmission ended, and Ethan leaned back in his chair, the leather creaking softly. His thoughts drifted to Alara, the enigmatic alien woman who had become an unexpected but integral part of their crew. Her presence had stirred something within him, something he hadn't felt in a long time. Hope, mingled with an unsettling sense of vulnerability. Down in the mess hall, the atmosphere was a mix of tension and camaraderie. Crew members exchanged stories and laughter, but there was an undercurrent of unease that everyone could feel. Alara sat at a corner table, her ice blue skin glowing softly under the artificial lights. She was a picture of serene grace, yet her eyes betrayed a flicker of apprehension. Ethan entered, his presence commanding immediate attention. He made his way to Alara, his steps sure and purposeful. "Mind if I join you?" he asked, his tone gentle. Alara offered a small smile, her eyes meeting his with a mix of curiosity and gratitude. "Please." They sat in a companionable silence for a moment, the din of the mess hall fading into the background. "The Stellar Scourge is moving," Ethan said finally. "We're preparing for another encounter." Alara's gaze sharpened, her posture stiffening. "I sensed as much. Their leader, Krylak, is relentless. He won't stop until he gets what he wants." Ethan studied her, the lines of his face softening. "And what does he want?" Alara hesitated, her fingers tracing the rim of her cup. "Power, control. But it's more than that. There's something personal in his vendetta. I haven't told you everything about my past." Ethan's heart tightened. He reached across the table, his hand resting on hers. "You can trust me, Alara. Whatever it is, we'll face it together." Her eyes glistened with unshed tears, and she nodded. "Krylak and we were once part of the same faction fighting for our people's survival, but our paths diverged. He became consumed by his thirst for power, and I couldn't follow him down that path. He sees my defection as a betrayal, and he won't rest until he's exacted his revenge." Ethan squeezed her hand, a silent promise of support. "We'll stop him. Together." The preparations for the impending battle were a flurry of activity. The crew worked tirelessly, their movements precise and coordinated. Ethan and Alara stood side by side on the bridge, their presence a source of strength and resolve for the rest of the crew. "All systems ready, Captain," reported Lieutenant Harper, his voice steady. Ethan nodded, his gaze sweeping over his crew. "Stay sharp, everyone. The Scourge won't know what hit them." As the Voyager approached the Yarian Nebula, the tension on the bridge was palpable. The nebula's swirling gases created a hauntingly beautiful backdrop, a stark contrast to the imminent violence. The first sight of the Scourge came in the form of a dark shadow on the edge of their sensors. Ethan's eyes narrowed. Battle stations. Prepare for engagement. The Stellar Scourge's ships emerged from the nebula like predators from the deep, their sleek forms bristling with weaponry. The space around the Voyager crackled with energy as the two forces collided. The ensuing battle was a symphony of chaos and strategy. Laser fire lit up the void, and the Voyager danced through the fray with practiced precision. Ethan's commands were clear and decisive, each order a testament to his tactical brilliance. Amidst the chaos, Ethan kept a watchful eye on Alara. She moved with a fluid grace, her knowledge of the Scourge's tactics proving invaluable. Together they navigated the storm, their bond strengthening with each passing moment. Hours later, the battlefield lay silent. The stellar Scourge had been repelled, their forces scattered. The Voyager bore the scars of battle, but her spirit remained unbroken. In the aftermath, Ethan and Alara stood on the bridge, the stars twinkling serenely outside the viewport. "We did it," Ethan said, his voice a mix of relief and exhaustion. Alara smiled, her eyes softening. "Yes, we did. Together." Ethan turned to her, his heart swelling with a mixture of pride and affection. "Alara, I know there's still so much we don't know about each other, and the future is uncertain. But I want you to know that, whatever comes, I'll be by your side." Alara reached up, cupping his cheek with a gentle hand. "And I by yours, Ethan." In that moment, amidst the cold expanse of space, a warmth blossomed between them, a promise of new beginnings and the unbreakable bond forged in the heart of the Scourge. Chapter 6. Battle Amongst the Stars. Captain, sensors are picking up multiple warp signatures, possibly Scourge vessels, Lieutenant Jensen reported, her voice a mix of anxiety and determination. The calm before the storm was over. Ethan's response was swift, his voice commanding yet calm. "Battle stations. Prepare to engage cloaking devices and charge all railguns. We won't let them catch us off guard." The crew sprung into action, a well-oiled machine of war. Alara stood slightly behind Ethan, her blue eyes wide with a mix of fear and awe at the human's readiness for battle. Her hands were clenched at her sides, her mind racing with thoughts of her own people, who had once fallen victim to the Scourge's ruthlessness. The first of the Scourge ships blinked into existence from the void, its hull scarred and ominous, bristling with weaponry. It was soon followed by two more, equally formidable. The Voyager was outnumbered but not outmatched. Ethan watched the enemy approach, his mind calculating vectors and trajectories. "Jensen, initiate evasive pattern Sigma 4. Let's keep them guessing where we are." The ship lurched as it danced through space, cloaking engaged, disappearing from one spot and reappearing in another. The Scourge opened fire, pulses of energy lighting up the space like deadly fireworks. The Voyager shuddered as a blast grazed its aft shield. "Shields at 76 and Tafton," called out the engineer from his station. Ethan's gaze never wavered from the viewport. "Target the lead ship. Fire all forward cannons on my mark. Now." A barrage of kinetic energy projectiles hurtled through space, striking the Scourge vessel with precision, tearing through its shields and hull. Cheers erupted from the crew, but Ethan silenced them with a raise of his hand. "Stay focused. This isn't over yet." His prediction rang true as the Scourge, enraged by the hit, coordinated their next assault with ruthless precision. Alara moved closer to Ethan, her voice barely a whisper. "Ethan, their next volley will be stronger. The Scourge doesn't relent." Her knowledge of the enemy, gleaned from harsh experiences, was invaluable. Ethan nodded, his expression grim. "Thank you, Alara. We'll be ready for them." He turned to his communications officer. "Signal all hands to brace for impact and prepare for close-quarters combat. If they board us, we need to be ready to repel them." The Scourge's next attack was a storm of energy and missiles, each explosion against the Voyager's shields like a hammer against an anvil. Ethan felt each impact a testament to his ship's resilience and the enemy's determination. But as the battle raged, the crew of the Voyager fought with a fierce determination, rallying around their captain and the alien who had become their unexpected ally. The ship weaved and dodged, its cannons firing in a deadly rhythm, creating a ballet of destruction against the backdrop of the infinite cosmos. In a daring maneuver, Ethan ordered the Voyager to plunge directly towards the Scourge flagship. "Prepare to deploy all secondary charges on my command," he shouted over the din of battle. As they closed in, the tension peaked, every crew member holding their breath. Just meters away from collision, Ethan gave the order. Now, charges detonated in a blinding explosion, engulfing the Scourge flagship in flames and debris, effectively neutralizing the immediate. The aftermath was a surreal calm, the remaining Scourge ships retreating into the warp, leaving behind a scattered field of debris and the victorious but battered Voyager. Ethan allowed himself a moment to place a reassuring hand on Alara's shoulder, a silent acknowledgement of their mutual loss and resilience. As the adrenaline faded, the crew began the somber task of damage assessment and repairs. Ethan and Alara shared a quiet look, a mix of relief and unspoken words about the cost of such victories. The battle was won, but the war was far from over. Chapter 7: Revelations. In the aftermath of the fierce battle, the Voyager floated silently through the cold expanse of space, its hull scarred and steaming from the skirmishes. Inside, the corridors echoed with the soft hum of the engines and the distant clatter of repair crews patching the battle's scars. Captain Ethan Blackwood stood at the viewport in his quarters, watching the stars shimmer like distant campfires. His mind was a whirlpool of emotions, relief at their survival tangled with concern for his crew, and for Alara. Alara, with her mysterious aura and hauntingly beautiful eyes, had quickly become more than a mere rescue to Ethan. As he turned from the window, he found her standing at the doorway, her figure framed by the soft light of the corridor. Her eyes, usually a calm pool of resolve, now mirrored the turmoil he felt inside. "Ethan," she began, her voice barely a whisper, yet it cut through the silence with the clarity of a bell. "There's something I need to tell you, about who I am, and why the stellar scourge won't stop." Ethan gestured to a seat, and they both sat across from each other. The room was lit only by the soft glow of the navigation screens, casting eerie shadows on their faces. Alara took a deep breath, and her story began to unfold. A tale of espionage, lost legacies, and interstellar politics. She was not merely an exile but a key figure in a clandestine resistance against the scourge, which had infiltrated the highest echelons of her home planet's government. As she spoke, her voice was steady, but her hands, folded in her lap, trembled slightly. Ethan listened, his expression unreadable, his mind racing to piece together the implications of her revelations. The Stellar Scourge was more than just pirates. They were usurpers, intent on overthrowing the established order of Alara's world, using any means necessary, including targeting her, the last scion of a deposed ruling family. "I didn't tell you earlier because I needed to be sure I could trust you," Alara admitted, her gaze falling. "Not just as a captain, but as someone I could believe in." Ethan reached out, his hand hesitating in the air before gently resting on hers. The touch bridged the distance between them, a silent affirmation of trust and a shared future. "You can trust me, Alara. No matter what comes our way, you're not alone anymore." The conversation shifted as they discussed what came next. With the Scourge likely regrouping for another assault, they needed to prepare, both tactically and personally. They brainstormed potential allies and strategies, drawing on Alara's insider knowledge and Ethan's tactical acumen. It was a partnership forged in the fires of conflict, one that balanced her intimate knowledge of her foes with his expertise in combat and leadership. As the meeting drew to a close, Alara stood, a new lightness to her step, as if sharing her burden had lifted some of the weight from her shoulders. Ethan watched her go, feeling the subtle shift in their relationship. No longer just captain and crew, they were allies in a deeper, more profound sense. That night, as Ethan lay in his bunk, the ship's gentle vibrations a comforting reminder of their ongoing journey, he realized the battle had changed him. He wasn't just fighting for the Voyager or its crew anymore. He was fighting for Alara, for her people, and for a future he hadn't dared to imagine before. A future where the distance between stars wasn't nearly as insurmountable as the distance between two hearts learning to beat as one. In the quiet solitude of his quarters, with the starlight softly illuminating his features, Ethan finally allowed himself to believe in something more than survival, in hope, in unity, and perhaps in love. Chapter 8: New Horizons. The battle had left the Voyagers scarred but standing, its crew weary yet unbroken. In the aftermath, the ship drifted silently through the void of space, the hum of its engines a soft lullaby against the backdrop of the stars. Captain Ethan Blackwood stood at the viewport of his quarters, watching the cosmos unfold before him, a tapestry of infinite possibilities. The quiet was a stark contrast to the recent chaos, giving him a moment to reflect on the journey that had led him here. Alara approached him quietly, her presence now as familiar as the ship he had commanded for years. Her steps were light, almost floating in the low gravity, her figure casting a slender shadow against the metallic floor. "Ethan," she said, her voice a gentle intrusion into the silence. He turned to face her, finding in her eyes a galaxy of emotions: fear, relief, gratitude. "We've come a long way, haven't we?" he asked, not just referring to their escape from the stellar scourge, but to the emotional distance they had traveled together. Alara nodded, moving to stand beside him at the viewport. Together they looked out at the vastness of space, a frontier that seemed a little less daunting with someone to share it. "This ship, your crew, you've all shown me a kindness I thought I'd never find again," she began, her voice tinged with a warmth that thawed her usual reserve. Ethan felt the weight of her words, heavy with the truth of her past solitude. He reached out, his hand hesitating in the air before resting gently on her shoulder. "You're part of this crew now," he assured her, his tone firm with conviction. "Part of this family." The word hung between them, potent and transformative. Alara's eyes glistened with unshed tears as she leaned into his touch, her body language shedding the last vestiges of her wariness. "Your strength inspired us," Ethan continued, his hand sliding from her shoulder to encase hers. "You helped us see that even in the vast coldness of space, there can be warmth. That amidst the stars, we're not alone." Alara squeezed his hand, her own resolve strengthening. "And you've shown me that my past doesn't define my future," she replied, her voice steady now, her stance confident. "That together we can face whatever comes next." They shared a look, a silent acknowledgement of the battles they'd fought, both within and without. It was a recognition of the scars they bore and the healing they had found in each other's company. The Voyager's intercom crackled to life, momentarily pulling them from their reverie. "Captain, we're ready to set a new course," came the voice of his first officer. Ethan gave Alara's hand a final squeeze before releasing it. "Let's chart a course for tomorrow," he said, a smile playing on his lips as he turned to the intercom. "Set coordinates for the Helix Nebula. It's time we explored some new horizons." As the crew busied themselves with preparations, Ethan and Alara walked to the bridge together, their steps synchronized, their spirits uplifted by shared purpose. The Voyager thrummed beneath their feet, a steadfast vessel on a course toward the unknown. As they entered the bridge, the crew looked up, their faces reflecting a spectrum of emotions, from exhaustion to exhilaration. Ethan took his place at the helm, Alara beside him, their presence a testament to the unity that had forged stronger bonds among them all. "Engage," Ethan commanded, his voice resonant with the promise of the adventures that lay ahead. The stars ahead seemed to beckon, each one a story waiting to be told, a challenge waiting to be met. Together, they steered the ship forward, the vastness of space a canvas on which they would paint their shared future. And as the Voyager slipped into the light speed, leaving trails of stardust in its wake, it carried with it the hopes and dreams of its crew, a family bound not just by duty but by a profound enduring loyalty. Chapter 9: Starbound. The ship had undergone repairs, and the scars from the battle with the stellar scourge were now just memories etched into the hull, reminders of their resilience. The crew moved with a renewed sense of purpose. The tension that once clouded their interactions had dissipated, leaving in its wake a bond strengthened by adversity. Ethan turned to Alara, noticing how the starlight illuminated her features, casting an ethereal glow on her ice-blue skin. "We're charting a course to the Helix Nebula," he announced, his voice steady yet imbued with a hint of excitement. "There are reports of unexplored planets that might hold new alliances, resources, and perhaps a few answers." Alara's eyes mirrored the starry tapestry outside. "A new beginning," she mused, her voice a melodic whisper that only Ethan could hear amid the quiet hum of the ship. "Yes, a new chapter for both our peoples," Ethan replied, his hand unconsciously finding hers. The touch was light, but it bridged the gap between their worlds, their past hardships, and their future adventures. In the mess hall, the crew gathered, sharing tales of their narrow escape and the bravery that had defined their victory. Laughter and chatter filled the room, a stark contrast to the silence that had once reigned. Among them, Chief Engineer Martinez raised a makeshift glass, her voice cutting through the noise. "To the captain and Alara, who showed us that sometimes the vastness of space can bring hearts closer than we ever imagined." Cheers erupted, and as Ethan entered with Alara, the crew's applause welcomed them. It wasn't just a celebration of survival. It was an acknowledgement of their evolved camaraderie and shared futures. Later, Ethan and Alara retreated to the observation deck, where the expanse of the cosmos awaited their contemplation. They stood in silence, a comfortable, shared silence that spoke of deep understanding and mutual respect. "Look at that cluster of stars." Alara pointed towards a distant constellation, her finger tracing the invisible lines between the glowing orbs. "Where I come from, it's believed that each star is the echo of a world's soul, ancient, enduring, and wise." Ethan considered this, his eyes reflecting the starlight. "And what do you think our echo would say about us right now?" "That we are boundless," Alara replied, her voice tinged with hope. "That despite the darkness, there is light. Light we bring with us, and light we find along." Ethan nodded, his resolve firming. "Then let's bring that light wherever we go, together." The final scene faded with the two of them looking out into the great expanse, the Voyager steadily cruising towards the Helix Nebula. The stars seemed to nod in approval, their twinkle like a promise of the infinite possibilities that lay in the universe's mysterious embrace. As the credits of their story rolled, it was clear that for Captain Ethan Blackwood and Alara, this ending was just another beginning. A prelude to more adventures, more challenges, and a journey that was boundlessly starbound.